Welcome to DevOps Decrypted, where we talk all things DevOps. I'm your host, Laura Larimore. I'm here today with our usual roundup, Matt, Jobin, John, and Rasmus. And today we have a special guest, Lilly Holden, who's here to talk to us a little bit about Kubernetes in light of the 10-year anniversary for the very clever pun, Kubernetes. So yay. Lilly, do you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world over there?
Hi all. So I'm Lilly. I'm part of the platform team in Adaptavist that is, among other things, looking after our Kubernetes clusters. And I'm working on a DevEx initiative, which is developer experience, because Kubernetes is complicated enough that we need to abstract it a bit and make it easy for developers to use it. So kind of simplify it and take the platform out of the picture a bit. So it's kind of what I'm working on. So relying on lots of Argo products, Argo CD, Argo workflows, events, etc. Trying to make Helm charts simple to use as well by using Helm chart libraries and our standardized application Helm charts, job Helm charts, and etc.
Lily, quick question. It's funny how you mentioned Kubernetes is complicated enough. I mean, it was supposed to make everything simple, right? I mean, I remember those days when we had Docker containers and we had to manually make sure that they're up and running in production, and that the orchestration of those containers, that's why Kubernetes came into effect in the first place. So why is it complicated? What makes it so complicated?
I think there's just so many choices. I think if you go and look at various Kubernetes clusters, it's unlikely you'll find two that are the same. Using the same packages inside and kind of having the same experience. Yes, you will kind of find similarities. It is an ecosystem, but they're all going to be customized in one way or the other using different ingress, different service mesh. And there is a relatively steep learning curve to each one of those. I think we shouldn't say it's not complicated. It is. It's just once you're in that world, you understand it, and it's kind of cool.
It's almost like a double-edged sword, isn't it? Where we've got, so one of the things that I love about Kubernetes is it's open source, and Google were very careful to put it out to the community in a way which didn't mean that they got to dominate. Whether that's successful or not is an exercise to the reader, I think. But then, you got like, you can choose whatever ingress you want. You can choose whatever storage you want, whatever backend, whatever different way of deploying your clusters you want. And part of me is like, all these things, we've got all the things, which one should I actually use? Someone please tell me how to do it. But then is that like part of the reason why it's become so successful? Because people, the kind of market's been able to find itself and find like the best ways of doing things?
I think it's about some of the things in Kubernetes have very simple interface. So like whole GitOps, I just commit a file and all of a sudden things are spinning and running and resources are being created. All of it is happening for you. But in order for that to happen, someone else needs to do the complicated stuff for you and hide it behind just like a simple YAML file. And that's kind of, that's quite impressive actually.
Go on, Rasmus.
I kind of wonder, just thinking about the history of Kubernetes overall, whether back when it started, it was kind of like, we need to organize, Docker containers better. Let's do that. But then somebody kept getting bright ideas about new powerful things to add to it. And it feels like the overall tooling is struggling to keep up with that. There's like one graph of like increasing complexity, and then the tool graph slowly tries to keep up, but it never quite gets there. So it always keeps getting more complicated.
Yeah, Rasmus, I think this is a really interesting point but I think that there's an inherent complexity to running distributed applications in clusters and the things like that. And I think that most engineering teams underestimate that complexity, and they don't actually it's a hard thing to see all of the various different parts of a distributed application across the network and the things. So I think any kind of attempt to simplify things down to super simple is kind of bound to break at certain points. So I wonder whether the complexity that you see in Kubernetes, when it's a simplification of like what it could be and what the real world like sort of looks like, which is what, you know, to Lily's point, why each system looks different. It's because it has different requirements and those kind of things.
But also, like, if you think maybe 10, 20 years ago, you would have separate teams doing each one of those functions. So you would have a team looking after database, you have a team after looking networking, and have a team like installing servers and things like that. So and now all of that is within one platform team. So obviously you need to kind of know all of those different topics. So that's kind of maybe why it seems a bit more complicated, because you need to be a bit more multi-skilled.
And I like the way Matt described it as, you know, a double-edged sword, because if you really think about it, the complexity comes because we are spoiled with all the options that you can do in there, right? You take any good best-in-class tools, you know, I know Rasmus, you just mentioned about, you know, the scale of problems, you know, think about Jenkins. You are a Jenkins nerd. I mean, we had the same exact problem. The tool is so good that you can do so many things with it, and suddenly people are complaining about, oh, Jenkins is so bad, which is not really the case. We are being an Atlassian partner. We know the same story about Jira. You know, we know it's the best tool out there, but people complaining about how complex the tool is. It's mostly because of all the things we can do with it. Kubernetes, I think, in a way, has the same problem because of all the options out there, which can supplement Kubernetes as a core platform. We are spoiled with choices, and you know, we keep on adding complexities on top of the existing platform.
So Rasmus, you're kind of, yeah, you're maybe one of the closest things we've got to like an open source guru. So I'm interested in what you feel about all this proliferation, you know, being an open source maintainer of things. Picking up on what Jobin said, like just arbitrarily, service mesh, right? You want a service mesh for your cluster, and
Which one?
Exactly. But my point here is, like, I don't know, Linkerd, Istio, other service meshes are available. So just looking at like the way that Kubernetes has grown and grown and grown and grown and grown, with all these proliferations of options. You look at the Istio people and the Linkerd people. I'm assuming they're different people. Do you think that, like, these individual products are kind of spurred on better by the fact that there's 2 or 3 almost competing, slightly overlapping, slightly not Venn diagramming options, and they all end up being better like that? Or would it have been better if someone just say, no, we're doing the service mesh? I know you couldn't do because of the licensing, and just had like one option, and then we're all like, oh, we don't have to be confused by all of these.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic, and indeed one that's close to my heart. And I wish, especially as said, an open source maintainer who's kind of run a mid-sized, you know, open source community for more than a decade, I wish for less fragmentation, honestly. I am so tired of it. But I almost wonder if this is more about human psychology and tribalism than it is about technology.
It always is, mate.
Yeah, like when you get something like Kubernetes, like, awesome, let's all standardize on that. Oh, wait, there are these other like OpenShift and Mirantis that are kind of like it, but because somebody had to go make money off it over here, or because somebody didn't like the color of the icon or something like that, they're going to go do their own thing over here. And it's just, it's crazy. It's too much. And what's worse is it still happens. I can sort of almost understand it if it's, you know, a startup that needs to make money. Therefore, they try to make everything their own, everything custom and so on, because they have to make money off it somehow. But even more open source projects are spinning up just because maybe 2 maintainers disagreed or something. It's wild.
But at the same time, all those people who are making money off of it, they're doing it, and people are still purchasing it for a reason, right? I mean, there must be something good that they're doing, and there must be something that customers want.
Yep. But that goes back to this very dangerous thing with a famous cartoon about how everything open source and Kubernetes and all that ultimately relies on this one guy in Nebraska thanklessly maintaining some library that's going to be open for vulnerabilities and all that. And with enough eyes, all bugs are shallow, works if you get enough eyes on them. But if everybody kind of runs off to their own camps and so on, that starts breaking apart. And if you have the commercial entities that like yeah, we just take everything open source over here and then just add our thing to top. Everything will be fine. That doesn't work, and then they don't contribute back. They don't add more eyes. People get into craziness about licenses. Less fragmentation, please.
So I love that. I love that. You know, the kind of the history of open source where you could run just everything purely open source, but we've got like abstraction on abstraction on abstraction ad nauseam these days. None of us have got time to not buy something somewhere. And I find it's quite interesting. I bring it back to the Kubernetes thing, how we have got this proliferation of services you can buy to kind of take care of things. I mean, Rasmus, you say like, you know, everything will be fine if you just take some open source things, cobble them together, and put a support contract over the top of it. I find it interesting how different companies, as the 10 years have gone by, have been trying to evaluate where the line is drawn. It's like, where do you have your techies? I don't mean that derogatorily. Where do you have your techies focusing their efforts, and where do you say, no, we're just going to buy that? And seeing that in things like you went to Mirantis. So that's Mirantis bought the remains of Docker Enterprise. So Docker's commercial offering around Docker Swarm and multi-server, multi-container stuff, which actually I quite liked back in the day. And they seem to have made a viable business out of it. So people are going and buying these container orchestration solutions. What's interesting then is if you put those models onto the cloud providers, so you Google, AWS, Microsoft, the sort of things that we're paying them for, a lot of it's compute and kind of like a thinly, a fairly thin layer of running the control plane for us. And seeing like how more people are doing that sort of thing rather than actually running their own control planes these days. And is it less? Are few people doing that than are running the likes of Mirantis, Nomad, etc.? It's yeah, it's interesting where you draw the line, I think.
Yep. And I don't see right now, I mean, sure, everything gets better over time to a point. But then you also get the things with like HashiCorp and Redis and all these things. And again, that one guy in Nebraska is still maintaining that one thing on his own. And like, when is something going to change? And I kind of wonder if we are going to face a paradigm shift thanks to AI. Will that make it easier? But first, it takes a whole lot of power to run that thing.
Takes a whole lot of
Yeah,
power
so
to
I
run
think
them.
one of the questions is,
Yeah.
are we going to run out of energy trying to run our AI? So what do you guys think about this news story that we passed around about Oracle Infra onto OpenAI?
Yeah, it's like OpenAI can't get enough compute. I think I read something somewhere too that they're also using part of like GCP. So just like more compute, more compute.
Yeah, well, I think you see all of this, the shortage of GPUs in Nvidia's share price, right? I think that's kind of where all of this things. I think it's fascinating that there's that level of collaboration between competitors to scramble around to make sure that OpenAI have enough GPUs. I think that's a fascinating thing. I'm not quite sure what I make of it, but it's a fascinating, fascinating thing that's happened.
It's wild.
Yeah, and it's almost come from nowhere. I mean, I've seen conversations of people like, oh my God, have you heard of this company called NVIDIA? Suddenly like more valuable allegedly than Apple and Microsoft. I mean, obviously, I think I'm among fellow nerds here who have been like tinkering with graphics cards for far too many years, and know who they are. But yeah, it's like it's a massive hype thing, and you're getting previously. I'm going to tread quite carefully here what I say about Oracle. Companies that maybe have a reputation for I'm going to tread really carefully here. No, I'm not. Maybe have a reputation for not necessarily entirely friendly business practices. All of a sudden cozying up to like big rivals to get what they need, given the scarcity of this stuff. Then so that was what struck me on this story. It's like everyone's collaborating together to make open AI as big as it possibly could be, which is quite a scary thing, really.
It is. It's hard to play as a little player in this game, where it used to be that you could kind of a scrappy startup most anything, but that's tough with the AI. And I wonder if it's like if it's a one-time transition phase where we're like, okay, we need all the GPUs and like make this one giant model. Do we come out on the other side and then things go back to normal, or it's a new paradigm, or oh, hello, singularity, we don't need to work anymore? Like, what happens? It's hard to know, but I kind of wonder, just to tie it back to Kubernetes, because I know that there's a lot of tools that are coming out to try to help make Kubernetes less complex. But then does it become different when you suddenly get to a point where an AI trained on anything Kubernetes can just generate all the stuff for you anyway?
Well, just to add to that, as the things, with OpenAI have been quite vocal about some of their training clusters and how all of that's running Kubernetes, and that's their big orchestrator. So you've got this thing which learns due to being run on Kubernetes clusters, generating Kubernetes things. So you end up with this circular phenomenon that's ends up helping build itself.
Yeah, but if you really think about it, one of the major problems that Kubernetes has is security, right? I mean, just because people think it's too simple, they overlook security, and then eventually you produce platforms that are less secure. I mean, AI has definitely a good place to do something there, because if AI, in many ways, we are already seeing some plugins coming on top of Kubernetes, which will look at specifically at securities and the flaws that it detects and highlights it. Because monitoring is not so good in Kubernetes. I mean, you have to obviously go for something else, a third-party add-on, to help us monitor it. If AI can do that job for us and highlight the issues that you have in the platform, I think that will certainly help. I mean, that's been the problem all along, right? People who are using Kubernetes clusters, they are not so good in terms of spinning up clusters. All they care about is, yep, just go and do an EKS cluster. Or, that's pretty much what people are doing now. They don't realize the underlying complexities. If AI can do that part for us, that will make it easier.
Yeah, we can tell AI to do that for us, can't we? I mean, the Kubernetes security thing has been a concern for a long time. I remember probably 5 or 6 years ago, when Docker Swarm was still a thing, before Docker had sold it off, I was training people on Docker Swarm, and they made a big thing, the Docker people, in the materials of saying how like Docker is secure by default, which raised a little bit of a giggle, but actually in the context of what Kubernetes lets you do, is absolutely true. And yeah, the platform, one of the biggest benefits of all this flexibility is you can do exactly what you want, including if that is shooting yourself in the foot and letting endless hackers from wherever you want into as soon as they're in your system, being able to go all over the system, unless you actually get into proper things like pod security policies and ingress and egress network policies, all that sort of stuff. And this actually pivots us, maybe if we want to pivot now, onto some of the things in the news at the moment, where we're seeing there's so much hype around the AI stuff, and especially around DevOps and getting people to deploy software better. And this stuff now seems to be heading down a route where we're actually getting AI that's actually useful in DevOps. And one of the ways that we're seeing that is in like the security. It's like put that together with platform engineering type principles and paved roads. We can be using AI to poke holes, pun intended, in our security policies and making this sort of stuff actually secure where it isn't by default. Is that the overall answer? Would I trust an AI if I say, hey, ChatGPT, can you write me a network security policy that's going to ensure that no one can ever hack my data, and trust it? No. But Go on, Rasmus.
That's where I've started playing with something that I wonder if that has some some staying power, because yeah, no one should trust an AI to learn, give me X, and then just take it at face value that, yep, that's got to be secure and all those things. What I've started doing is I've started out trying behavior-driven development, where you write, features for whatever you're trying to do, and then break those features into scenarios, and then run them as actual unit tests. And I've done that for deploying Kubernetes things, like deploying Helm charts and adjusting things and so on. And I have a feeling that if you separately ask the AI for your feature write-up, and then you as a human yep, checks out. Then you ask for the scenarios, and yep, checks out. Then you ask for the unit tests, yep, tests out, and they pass. That's why you're in the loop yourself as a human, and you have the automated testing to actually validate things. That's a little more difficult if you're trying to have AI write a poem for you. But at least in Kubernetes and to some degree software development, if you can combine it with automated testing to help validate it, you don't have to trust the AI. You can verify.
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly how I use AI at the moment. So it is almost like peer programming with an AI. So I still verify and I have that conversation going on. And that's where you can really be accelerated versus just expecting AI to do things for you and be right the first time.
I love that idea, peer programming with AI, because I think that's what we can utilize all the capabilities that AI can give us. Again, cross-check, make sure it all tests out, as Rasmus said. So that way we can save a lot of time and actually write the poems that we want to write, because I don't want AI to write the poems for me. I do want AI to do some bit of programming so I can save time there and make sure, again, automated testing, and that's where all the DevOps principles apply, I guess.
Yeah, AI is actually really useful in that realm for helping you generate the tests, and of course you have to check it. I also find it useful in deployment scenarios where I need to provide documentation. I can get a little help with the wording and all of that stuff, and I think that helps too, and that can help in the development lifecycle to be able to quickly generate that documentation and not have to bear down on that and get back to the poems we like to write.
That does make me think one day, and we're going to automate a lot of the things, then what are we going to do? Are we all going to become poets?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah.
It sounds lovely. I would love to just sit and play in my code poet life. That would be so nice.
I mean, if you really think about it, AI can write better poems than me. So I don't know what I'm going to do.
No, Jobin, I find that hard to believe. I think there's an artist within us all. Hopefully we can get. We shouldn't be letting these AIs do the artistic things. Let them do the science. I'm done with science. They can do the science and we do the arty bits.
I do like that when we're just using AI to augment ourselves rather than just handing our jobs over like that.
Yeah, and that seems to be the reality of how all this stuff is emerging, isn't it? I mean, inevitably it's not as simple as AI is not going to take your job. I think we covered this before actually, but probably a few months ago. And what I really like is now we are seeing tooling emerge with that in mind. So maybe a year ago we were like, oh, you can get Visual Studio's now got an AI assistant that's going to write all your code for you. We're like, no. But these days, dragging it back on topic, just looking at a news article here, Pulumi adds generative AI copilot to manage cloud infrastructure. And the whole thing here is it's like, yes, we know the mistakes that AI can make. We know that AI is never going to have the full context that a developer will, but we can still innovate and bring out tools that save us a lot of time and that we can peer program with. Like out Pulumi, cloud infrastructure generator tool as one of those things. So maybe it's not going to be terrible after all.
It's also interesting how Pulumi does it, right? I mean, it's adding basically a lot of AI assistance on top of what the DevOps pipeline that we have. But going back to the point that John was making early on, in a distributed environment, there's so many dependencies and so many complexities that no AI is going to solve. I mean, that's where the human intervention is needed. Granted, at the end of the day, we don't need 100 DevOps engineers with all the capabilities that Pulumi and other providers are coming up with. But we may still need 5 engineers who are really good at using these capabilities that AI is adding in, then making sure that we are also filling in the gaps, all those complexities because of the distributed application architecture that we have, and maybe multiple cloud providers we have, right? So
I think as it pushes forward, and then you see that news article where Oracle and OpenAI are kind of joining together, and you think all these very large corporations with lots of resources are driving this. And I think it's very important that as people in development that we hold on to what we have, and we continue to push back and say, no, I'm not going to use that in that way. I would like to use it this way. And that can help drive some of that change. That they have a lot of resources to drive it one way, but I think that a lot of people who use it can kind of have a voice and pull it off into the direction we would like it to go.
So I know we've been looking at foil.ai or .io, I lose track. Is that the one that can also kind of sort of help teach itself when it screws up DevOps? Because it sounds like that's one of those DevOps related ones that we can really find useful.
Yeah, that's right. I think this is an interesting tool, because it's very much that kind of companion thing of like help you with some things, and then if there's errors, it can help you understand those the errors. I think that's an interesting sort of assistive tool, and I don't think it's where the discussion's been going, right? This is like those assistive tools, those are the ones that kind of give you superpowers. Like those are great. The ones that will go and take over, not so much. So that's where I kind of want to see tooling going, making sure that human in the loop is important, and like just making you better at doing what you do best. That's got to be the best kind of AI, and I think foil looks in that region of that kind of thing.
So no, I completely agree, and I remember reading somewhere, and actually we have seen it happening too. There is AI that can produce a complete podcast, but I'm not sure if it can actually go to a wide range of topics like we did in this one. From Kubernetes to AI, coming back to security, how we can use AI in Kubernetes. So it's interesting. Yes, I would still see it as a great assistant, but something that replaces me.
I think we should put it on our tagline: DevOps Decrypted, still better than AI.
I will take it.
So with AI, are we going to get an improved developer experience, or are we just going to like outsource the developer experience? Where are we going with DevEx in an AI-enabled world?
We should probably have a podcast just on that topic.
Does AI really know what is a good developer experience, or do you need a human to say, I like this or I don't like it?
I love that thought.
Lily, I think you've just introduced, just invited yourself back onto the next podcast. Brilliant. Yeah. I mean, DevEx is still emergent, and I almost see like DevEx as a little bit of an anti AI thing. Yeah, just basically agreeing with you, Lily. There, it's like we automate things. We do platform engineering, and we give our users, e.g., software developers, a load of tools and expect them to just go and click on things. And we give people buttons to do things. And I like that DevEx is now coming around as a re-emergence of hang on, wait a minute. These are humans that are writing our software for us. And I'm a little uneasy as to how we kind of mesh the emergence of AI with that initiative. Or maybe DevEx becomes, or the requirements for DevEx, other than like, do you like this, become almost automatable, and then we let the machines take over again. I don't know.
Yep. And from there, you can also kind of get from DevEx, it's not just about being, happy developing code and all that. I would like to think it slowly extends into kind of a more sensitive future in which we're thinking about, mental health and all those kind of things as human beings. which could perhaps tie back to that thing about open source and fragmentation and just help cut down on that to where we can all just live together in a happier world. We can sort of become poet psychologists.
So there we
No
go.
more Java writing poems. Okay.
Yeah. Let's train those AI so that we can all become poets. TLDR, if you're just joining us.
This has been a fascinating discussion, you guys. Y'all are so great. Lilly, thanks for coming on and talking to us a little bit about Kubernetes in light of their 10-year. And I appreciate everyone's thoughts and discussions around AI. On the last topic, DevEx, we will be talking about that next month with Jennifer Davis. So please come and join us for that. And for our panel here, Matt, John, Jobin, Rasmus, and myself, this has been DevOps Decrypted.